Well, I think they're going to try to make him change his mind first. But if it comes down to, they're not going to hamstring Kyle Shanahan and say you can only play him at receiver. They're not going to do that. And if it comes down to that, they're going to trade him.
Mac guys on Birds 365. Hour number 2 coming your way. Mike Sealski on this for the Inquirer will jump aboard and talk all things Bird with us coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. John, someone disagrees with you.
About what? I can't believe it.
You have been rather outspoken about the talented wide receiver / running back of the San Francisco 49ers, the added value that Deebo Samuel brings to the table, but specifically the fact that he does so for the San Francisco 49ers and the fact that Kyle Shanahan et al. Out there by the Bay are the ones who have figured out best how to use them and get the most out of them. Well, the guy who disagrees with you is Deebo
Samuel. Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily agree that he brings more value to San Francisco or that his unique usage is in his best advantage. That although there are no quotes from Deebo Samuel, it was pretty widely reported yesterday that he has requested trade from the San Francisco 49ers. I guess I understand where he's coming from. He's seeing what Davante Adams is getting as far as a contract goes, and they don't hand the ball off to Davante Adams. They just throw the ball to Davante Adams. So he believes that he needs to be a guy who is a wide receiver and a wide receiver only to make that kind of money. Is he cutting off his nose to spite his face here, John?
Well, yes and no. I understand. I said now it makes sense when I said, because the story didn't make sense to me when it first broke, because San Francisco was willing to give him the money, willing to give him the extension. So it wasn't about money. And everyone said, it's about money. It's about, no, duh, he wants money. But San Francisco was willing to extend him and make him one of those, 18 to $22 million receivers. They could have worked that part of it out. But yeah, the interesting part is that Deebo Samuel doesn't think playing in the backfield makes a lot of sense. So to me, it's a business decision in that running backs get hurt and your longevity gets hurt. And if your longevity gets hurt, his agent Tory Dandy is probably pointing out to him, hey, you could just, make this and be a receiver and go somewhere else. And now the fact that other coaches will be more ineffectual with him helps his longevity case. So that part of it makes some sense. Problem is, you're not Davante Adams as a receiver. You can't run the route tree like Davante Adams. You can't turn defensive backs into a top into the ground and spin them around as one of the best route runners in this league. You're a very, very unique player who Kyle Shanahan figured out how to use very, very well and very, very effectively. So you got to be careful. Will somebody trade for him and pay him $22 million? Yes. Will he be effective enough to make it past those 2 years window to just being a receiver? Well, if you compare him to Davante Adams or Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill, probably not. So it's one of those things you sort of weigh. And it's interesting. I brought up Minkah Fitzpatrick because it's players can think a different way. The Miami Dolphins loved Minkah Fitzpatrick, loved him so much, they wanted him to learn the entire defense and play all these different positions and be the Swiss Army knife. And he said, I don't want to do that. That's a lot of work. I just want to play safety and be the best safety and be one of the best safeties. And he got out of there and he went to a situation where they just play him at safety. I always bring up Malcolm Jenkins. He was the exact opposite. He wanted that. He craved it. He got bored when you told him just go play safety. players are interesting and they're all different. And, when I look at Deebo Samuel, you heard, he's my favorite player, Jody. I've said it. My favorite player to watch. The uniqueness, the way San Francisco uses him, his ability to move all over, those manufactured touches we always talk about. He doesn't want to do it. Yeah. And there's not much you can do if he doesn't want to do it.
Do you believe the 49ers? Uh, I don't want to make it as cut and dry as he will be traded, he won't be traded. Will they at least consider it? Will they shop him? Will they see what they could get in return? And if it is enough in their minds, will they pull the trigger on a deal? Do they even go down that road? Because, hey, I didn't think Tyreek Hill was going to be traded this year. Yeah, he was. If you told me Davante Adams was going to get the contract that he did, and it was reported after the fact that the Packers absolutely offered the same exact money, that Davante Adams just wanted to go play with his buddy Derek Carr, the West Coast guy, get back out that he pushed for it, and the Packers relented and said, okay, fine, if you want to be traded, we'll go. Are the 49ers at some point just going to go, yeah, no matter how much we know he is the key cog, forget about quarterback. Eventually, they believe the quarterback will become the key cog, but they're one of few teams in the NFL where the key cog on offense is not the quarterback. Well, if that's the case, how the hell do you trade someone like that? How do you think the 49er thinking is going right now?
Well, I think they're going to try to make him change his mind first. But if it comes down to, they're not going to hamstring Kyle Shanahan and say you can only play him at receiver. They're not going to do that. And if it comes down to that, they're going to trade him. They're going to chalk it up as, he's just an unhappy player. He doesn't want to be involved. But you can't tell a head coach, especially one that has made Deebo Samuel into the player he has, the way he has. Oh, you can't do this. You can't put him in the backfield. He doesn't want to do that. You can't run a football team that way. So if that's the end game of Deebo and Tory Dandy and saying he doesn't want to play that, then he's got to go. I mean, there's no way around that. And another team can easily say, yeah, we'll just bring you in as a receiver because A, they probably don't have the coach to utilize them anyway. And B, it's easy to just insert somebody as a receiver and say, okay, go run these routes and just run the plays. And can't do it if you're San Francisco because you've already done the other things. And you'd be really, really hamstringing your head coach in the locker room. So many different ways. You can't do it.
All right, so if San Francisco is going to be forced to go down this road, Eagles jump in?
No, they're certainly not going to pay him $22 million to dictate what he can do in the offense. I mean, that's just not how the Eagles do business. And, all these decisions, and people probably get tired of it. I get tired of it. The Eagles, and I say this all the time, the Eagles, most of their decisions, the vast majority of their decisions in the moment make a whole lot of sense to me. So that's not the problem. I always use that term vacuum. In a decision in a vacuum, no, they're not going to bring him in. No, they're not going to go to $19 million for Christian Kirk. They're not going to go to $14 million for Marcus Williams. They're not going to overpay for Stephon Gilmore. Agree. I agree with every single one of those decisions in the vacuum. You get outside of the vacuum, you lost that player, you lost this player, you're not in on this player, you lost this player. It's a little bit different. And that's why it's very, very hard to be disciplined. The Eagles are one of the more disciplined teams in the NFL. I've argued maybe they're too disciplined at times. But, all right, if we want to argue that, then I'm going to go pay A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf. Now it looks like AJ might be getting a deal with Tennessee, but we'll see how that shakes out. I'm not going into business with a player who is dictating how you can use him. You can't do it that way. Only bad organizations will do it that way. Somebody will do it. And there's a lot of bad organizations. I'm looking at you, Jacksonville, if you have any money left. Somebody will do it. It's not going to be the Eagles.
All right. So if they're not in on any of these other veteran wide receivers, then we know they're taking a wide receiver with one of those first 2 picks, right? Has to be. If you tell me they're not trading for Deebo Samuel, the A.J. Brown is staying put, that we know they made efforts to get veteran wide receivers via both trade and free agency this year and swung and missed on every one of them. Some were just a nasty pitch. You got to give credit to the opposition. It wasn't like they took a bad swing. Just a hell of a pitch. They're shut out. They're going back to the dugout with the bat on the shoulder. Doesn't matter whether they took good cuts or not. The only thing that matters is results. All right, you're up again for the second time now. The draft is just around the corner. Is it a foregone conclusion one of those 2 top picks is a wide receiver?
I think it's a foregone conclusion. One of the top 51 picks is a wide receiver. I think I would lean towards more than 50% of wide receiver in the first round, but I don't think you can come out of that top 51 without a wide receiver. I think that's the drop dead spots, and you need more talent at the position. They had a sea change. They tried to get the veteran. The market exploded. Now they want to go a different way. I don't think it's the best case scenario. You know, that kid from Georgia who tore his ACL, Pickens, there's another value. I should have brought him up in the injury conversation with Les. There's a guy probably be a top 15 pick if he didn't get hurt and wasn't able to play the season, so kind of fell on the radar. Maybe he slips to 51. You can go about it that way. But they got to get a receiver at the top of the draft.
I remember Pickens as a freshman being as good as he was, and he was a guy certainly I knew I was going to have to keep my eye on. But like you said, the injuries have handicapped him. Is there really going to be a good enough player at 51? I know that the Eagles, you can argue, have actually had more success in the second round than they have the first round. But that's going to be good enough, a wide receiver at 51?
Well, probably not, but they're in a building phase. Remember, Jody, they're not they're building, so not right away. I will say a player at 51 in this draft will be better than what they have. They'll be able to get a receiver that's better.
No, when
than
you
what
say
they
that, you
have.
mean wide receiver 2 and down. You're not including Devontae Smith in that.
No. Always Devontae's always put off to the side in these wide receiver conversations. Devontae's good. I'm talking about everybody else.
Right.
He's better than those guys. He's going to be better. 51. Throw out a name is going to fall. I don't think Christian Watson's going to fall that far. He'd be somebody they'd be interested in. Pickens might because of the injuries, and he might be a better player, to be honest. That might be a good value pick, really good value pick. They would jump on something like that, but it's deep as a whole because that's what college is producing these days, wide receivers, which is why it's so ironic the Eagles can't find wide receivers in the easiest time to find wide receivers. It's a bizarre thing. And then player development comes into it because we talked a little bit about Jalen Reagor, and yeah, BLG was kind of harsh. I said, I never got that feeling from Jalen that he doesn't try. I think he's more of what Les was saying about Sidney Jones, just shattered confidence. He's got no confidence. I mean, zero. And either way, I don't think it's salvageable here in Philadelphia. But when they do bring in this receiver, whomever it is, you got to stink and develop them. And people say, "Well, they developed Devontae." Did they?
No.
He was pretty.
Devontae was a pretty finished product when he showed up.
He was a pretty bad. I give Nick Saban credit for that. And you could say Quez Watkins, yeah, a little bit. He's certainly more productive than the average 6th-round pick. So they get a little feather in that cap, but you need more than that. You need that top tier talent, which would be JJ and Jalen and They haven't been able to develop those guys.
And the thing that scares me about the Eagles developing wide receivers with this coaching staff that's now in place, yeah, they reached out and got a mediocre guy that because the coach likes his work ethic and that he does all the little things that you need out of a wide receiver. This team desperately needed a veteran wide receiver as a big playmaker, not a guy who is unafraid to put his nose in there and block at the wideout position. But that's the guy that they picked up this year. Nick Sirianni is a guy who I think I would like being around. He's a guy who I think I would like to be coached by if I were a football player. He's one of those kind of guys. But I don't know that that's a strong suit of him yet. I know that's where his path came from and that he's a former wide receiver himself and he loves to talk about ball when we're talking about wide receivers. But I've not seen the evidence that he can take a hunk of clay as a wide receiver and mold him into a overachieving individual. Sirianni hasn't shown me that. And the biggest thing that he's done since he's taken over is, yeah, let me go get my old coat guy who is unafraid to go out there and block like a maniac.
Well, it's not. I will say it's not Nick's fault that they haven't been able to get a better veteran receiver. But as far as the development aspect, yeah, that's why they were brought in. That's how the Eagles spun this thing. Oh, this staff is good on the player development. And I said last year how much Nick Sirianni spent with the receivers in training camp. It got to the point where I'm like, is this guy the head coach? I mean, he's got to do other stuff. He was spending so much stinking time with the receivers. And the proof is in the pudding. All right, you know, if you want to be the glass is half full guy, you can point to Devontae and Quez, and you and I are on agreement with Devontae Smith. Devontae, the first day I saw Devontae Smith, I remember. You probably don't remember because you're on the air 100 million times on 100 million shows, Jody. So I understand it. But the first time I saw him, I said, this guy's just different than any other receiver they have. I mean, he showed up and he was a better route runner than anybody they've had in years. And they had some good route runner. Nelson was a good route runner. Nelson Aguilar was, his problem was catching the football, tracking the football. He could get open. Deshaun Jackson was a heck of a route runner. People think of him as a deep threat. He was a heck of a route runner. Devontae is like, you know, he's got a chance to be Adams, Diggs, Thielen level route runner. I mean, he is great already. And obviously, if he, you know, cleans up the attention to detail, he could be even better. And then Quez is the one where you can say, okay, there was certainly he got better. Jalen Reagor got worse. JJ got worse. Greg Ward got worse as a player, you know, understanding where he was, shifting from quarterback to wide receiver. But Greg Ward was effective and he got worse under this group. And that's the scorecard, Jody, right now.
And for a guy who, if that were just the scorecard for any coach, you go, all right, not good. But when you're coming in as a guy who's a former receivers coach, that's supposed to be your strong suit, that's one of the things you're leaning on, that's not a great scorecard at all for the head coach of Philadelphia Eagles. Hopefully it improves this year, and hopefully part of that improvement is the guy that they take at either 15 or 18 in the draft. I think they're going first round wide receiver, but we shall see. All right, Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We're scheduled to be joined by Mike Sealski, top columnist here in Philadelphia, has been for years. The Inquirer going to jump aboard with us here on Birds 365.